Good morning, all, and welcome to the South Carolina Public Service Commission. It is Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, approximately almost exactly 10 a.m. We are here today on docket 2025-65E, Duke Energy Carolinas Petition for Storm Securitization Financing Order. First, it appears that all commissioners are present in the hearing room. Ms. Wessinger Hill, if you would, please read the document and explain today's proceeding.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The hearing before you today is in docket number 2025-65E concerning the petition of Duke Energy Carolinas LLC for a storm securitization financing order. The petition is brought as required by South Carolina Section 58-27-1110, subsection A of the Storm Damage Recovery Act in Article 8, Chapter 27 of Title 58. The hearing was scheduled and noticed by the clerk's office to begin today at 10 a.m., which is Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, and is subject to continue, if necessary, and at the call of the chairman, on to Thursday, June 26, 2025. Mr. Chairman, upon inquiry of all participating counsel of record, all parties are present and available for your call of appearances. The docket is ready. However, once you call it into order, there are two preliminary issues which need to be addressed, one from the Office of Regulatory Staff and one from Duke Energy Carolinas LLC, the petitioner.
Thank you very much. First, let's have the parties please introduce themselves, beginning with the company.
Yes, good morning, Chair Powers, Vice Chair Williams, members of the Commission. My name is Kamal Robinson, appearing on behalf of Duke Energy Carolinas, LLC. With me today is Kathleen Richard, also appearing on behalf of Duke Energy Carolinas, as well as Ashley Cooper and Alex Brazil of Baker Donaldson. Both Ms. Richard and I have been admitted pro hoc vice in this proceeding.
Welcome. And I wonder, I look at this crowd, who's running the store?
Well, speaking of that, Chair, if it also may please the Commission, I would also like to introduce Ms. Erica Green, Ms. Allison Williams, and Mr. Jordan Daniels, who will ensure that any summaries, exhibits, and any other handouts are properly provided to the Commission and to the parties
And we
during the course of the proceeding.
We appreciate that very much. DCA.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm Roger Hall with the Department. Also with me today is Jake Edwards.
All right. And Office of Regulatory Staff.
Good morning, Chair Powers, Vice Chair Williams, and members of the Commission. Donna Rainey and Claire Bench on behalf of the Office of Regulatory Staff.
Thank you very much and welcome all. First, let's start with the issue that the company wants to raise. You have the floor.
Chair, I will defer to the ORS first.
Thank you. Go first. I'm sorry. ORS.
Chair Powers, as a preliminary matter, ORS would like to move the settlement agreement into the record, followed by brief comments from the from the parties.
All right. The settlement agreement will be identified as the settlement agreement marked.
Thank you, Chair Powers, members of the Commission. On June 23rd, 2025, ORS filed the comprehensive settlement agreement entered into by Duke Energy Carolina, South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs, and the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff. In this matter, parties contended with complex and technical issues, and in testimony, parties presented diverse issues and positions, and while maintaining their own interests. However, in good faith and in the spirit of compromise, all parties to this matter was able to reach a comprehensive settlement agreement, which resulted in a resolution of all issues in this matter. And at this time, I would just point out a few of those issues. As a result of the settlement agreement, the amount to be securitized is $556 million instead of $604 million that was included in the company's petition. The quantifiable net benefits that will be realized as a result of the settlement agreement is approximately 20.9%, which corresponds to approximately $143 million. Excuse me. The settlement agreement results in significant savings for ratepayers. ORS believes approval of the settlement agreement is in the public interest, and ORS requests that the Commission approves the settlement agreement as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair. To your right.
Vice Chair Williams.
Counsel, may I ask a question?
Yes, Vice Chair.
While I know you don't, there's no way for you to know how the witnesses will answer the questions if the Commission has questions. But would it be fair to say, or do you think it's a fair statement, that where, as you said, parties may have had different positions, different a level of interest in various issues regarding the securitization, at this point, everyone agrees with the settlement. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's a fair assessment.
And so while the Commission may explore areas where there were differences, is it reasonable to believe that regardless of what those differences may have been before the settlement was reached, at this point, every witness is going to come, more based on what you just said and based on the settlement as presented, regardless of our level of questioning, every witness is going to come back to the statement that essentially is, I support the settlement. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, in accordance with the settlement agreement, all witnesses to this proceeding will be in support of the settlement agreement.
All right. Thank you, counsel.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Who would like to go next?
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the company, I am pleased to be before you here today in support of a comprehensive settlement agreement that represents the culmination of extensive negotiations among all parties in this docket. This agreement resolves all issues presented in the proceeding and is now before this Commission for its consideration. I would like to personally thank, on behalf of the company, the ORS and the DCA for their collaboration and willingness to engage in good faith compromise to achieve this outcome. Hurricane Helene was an unprecedented storm that caused extraordinary damage across the company's service territory, resulting in significant costs to restore service to our customers as quickly as possible. The settlement agreement presents a framework that will allow the company the ability to recover those costs while also providing significant quantifiable savings for customers through securitization. As counsel of the ORS stated, those savings are approximately 20.9%, or $143 million. This resolution comes only after a full and detailed exploration of the company's application, including multiple rounds of testimony, discovery, and an overall detailed review. While I cannot speak to the specifics of those settlement discussions, I can say that this agreement reflects a well-informed and diligent effort by all parties to reach a fair and balanced compromise. The company believes this settlement agreement represents a fair and reasonable resolution of all issues in this proceeding, and the company respectfully requests that the Commission approve the agreement in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And you know, the one thing I've thought about in the last couple of days preparing for this is we're going to have storm after storm after storm, and I hope all utilities are looking at some sort of long-range plan to deal with these things. I'm sure y'all are. This particular thing in North Carolina, it's a movie. That's just an awful thing that happened, and Duke's response needs to be merited.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Hall.
Good morning again. As has already been stated, the Department of Consumer Affairs is also happy to join this full settlement and present it to the Commission. It's been alluded to by Ms. Rainey, Vice Chair Williams' questions, and Mr. Robinson. And as evidenced by the testimony in this case, there were differences of opinion on several issues in this matter. But we were able to work with Duke and the ORS to find common ground. We believe the settlement will ensure that the bonds meet the statutory goals of quantifiable net benefits for customers, as well as the lowest charges consistent with market conditions. Based on that and based on the common ground we were able to find, we do ask that the commission approve the settlement in full. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. Based on the responses received, I am not going to cross-examine the lawyers this morning. I don't think it's necessary in this situation. So if you're ready to proceed, Mr. Robinson or Mr. Cooper, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have one other matter, and it'll be brief, so I'll sit. So, Chair, on May 28th, 2025, the company filed a letter withdrawing storm recovery costs allocated to Greenwood rate customers from amounts to be recovered through securitization. Given the language and the context as it pertains to the settlement, the company, and the company has spoken with ORS and DCA, they do not object, would like to move and mark this letter into the market for identification and enter it into the record, please.
Okay, and what's the date of that letter?
May 28th, 2025.
All right.
Stated letter withdrawing storm recovery costs allocated to Greenwood rate customers from amounts to be recovered through securitization.
All right, the May 28th letter concerning securitization shall be marked as exhibit number 2.
Thank you, sir. No more preliminary matters for the company.
None from anyone else? Was any objection to that letter being put into evidence?
No objection.
All right, thank you very much. You can proceed.
Good morning, Chairman Powers. Duke Energy Carolinas calls Brent C. Guyton to the stand.
Mr. Guyton, if you'll raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Let me just state too to all parties, somewhere between subways and airplanes, I got a cold this weekend. If I start coughing and get up, it's not for lack of interest. I will only have to step out so I don't interrupt the proceeding.
All right. Mr. Guyton, can you please state your name and business address for the record?
Thank you. Sorry, Brent C. Guyton, Duke Energy Carolinas, Director of Asset Management for Distribution.
Thank you. And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm sorry, I've jumped ahead. Duke Energy Carolinas, Director of Asset Management Distribution.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Guyton. And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision direct testimony of 28 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on March 21st, 2025 in this docket?
I am.
And do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
I do have one change on page 21, line 12. 150 should be 155.
All right, thank you. And subject to that revision, if I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chairman Powers, at this time, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Guyton be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand. Thank you. Mr. Guyton, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
I have.
And would you please deliver that summary at this time?
Good morning, Chairman Powers and members of the Commission. In my direct testimony, I discussed the significant damage Hurricane Helene inflicted on the company's service territory and the company's extensive but prudent storm recovery activities undertaken pursuant to the company's Emergency Response Plan, or ERP. I first described the ERP, which is designed to ensure rapid scalability, clear accountability, and effective coordination between internal departments and external organizations. Next, I described the incident management team, which is composed of personnel from across the Duke Energy organization that are assigned to specific roles during storm response and restoration. I then described the ERP's 3 storm restoration phases and provide specific details on the company's storm recovery activities pursuant to the ERP in response to the destruction and unprecedented devastation caused by Hurricane Helene. Furthermore, I discussed the recommendations made by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff in Duke Energy Progress LLC's 2022 Phase 1 storm securitization proceeding regarding the pre-planning and resource management processes for storm events. I can confirm that both DEC and DEP have incorporated these recommendations into their ERP processes and that are used for level 3 storms. Finally, I explained that each phase of the recovery process, from pre-storm activation to the return of the system to normal operations, adhered to the established protocols and industry best practices in response to Hurricane Helene. This concludes the summary of my pre-file testimony.
Thank you. Chairman Powers, at this time, Mr. Guyton is available for questions by the Commission.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the Department of Consumer Affairs, Office of Regulatory Staff? Commissioner questions? Any questions from commissioners? You're a lucky guy. You may step down.
Thank you.
I would ask in a case like this, since we've received settlements at a late point in time, if you could please stay in case we do think of something during the review. Thank you.
Chairman Powers, at this time, the company calls a panel of Melissa Colberth and LaWanda Jiggets.
Ms. Jiggets, I'll start with you if you'll raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And Ms. Colberth, if you'll raise your right hand, do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Jiggets. Please state your name for the record.
My name is LaWanda M. Jiggets.
And by whom are you employed in what capacity?
I'm employed by Duke Energy Carolinas as a Rates and Regulatory Strategy Director.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision direct testimony of 30 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on March 21st, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 7 exhibits to your direct testimony labeled as Jiggets Exhibits 1 through 7 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed direct testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Chairman Powers, at this time, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits of Ms. Jiggets be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Ms. Jiggets will be entered in the record as if given orally from the stand. The pre-filed exhibits marked as Jiggets 1 through 7 will be marked for identification and placed in the record as exhibit number 3.
Thank you. Ms. Jiggets, have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision supplemental direct testimony of 7 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on May 1st, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed supplemental direct testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 7 exhibits to your supplemental direct testimony labeled as Jiggets Supplemental Exhibits 1 through 7 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed supplemental direct testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Chairman Powers, at this time I move that the pre-filed supplemental direct testimony and exhibits of Ms. Jiggets be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed supplemental direct testimony of Ms. Jiggets will be entered in the record as if given orally from the stand. As to the exhibits on the last one submitted, Exhibit 3 and Exhibit 4, are there any objections from any party? Thank you very much. The supplemental exhibits, Jiggets 1 through 7, shall be put in as Exhibit 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Jiggets, have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision rebuttal testimony of 28 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on June 2nd, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
And do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 7 exhibits to your rebuttal testimony labeled as Jiggets Rebuttal Exhibits 1 through 7 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I move that the pre-filed rebuttal testimony and exhibits of Ms. Jiggets be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed rebuttal testimony of Ms. Jiggets will be entered into the record as given orally from the stand. As to the rebuttal exhibits 1 through 7, are there any objections from any party? Hearing none, they're admitted as exhibit number 5.
Thank you, Chairman. And Ms. Jiggets, have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision settlement testimony of 10 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on June 23rd, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed settlement testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 7 exhibits to your supplemental testimony labeled as Jiggets Settlement Exhibits 1 through 7 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed settlement testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Chairman Powers, at this time, I move that the pre-filed settlement testimony and exhibits of Ms. Jiggets be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed settlement testimony of Ms. Jiggets shall be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand. As to the settlements exhibits 1 through 7, are there any objections? Hearing none, they will be admitted as exhibit number 6.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Jiggets, have you prepared a summary of your direct, supplemental, rebuttal, and settlement testimony?
Yes, I have.
Would you please deliver that summary at this time?
I'll be happy to. Good morning, Chairman Powers and members of the Commission. In my direct testimony, I 1. Identify and estimate the revenue requirement necessary to recover the storm recovery costs that the company proposes to finance through storm recovery bonds. 2. Compare the net present value, or NPV, of costs to customers under the proposed storm recovery charge method against the net present value of cost to customers that would result from the application of the traditional recovery method. 3rd, I describe the allocation methodology for the storm recovery charge across classes. And 4th, I support the company's request to offset the existing negative balance in its Commission-approved storm reserve through securitization. I demonstrate that based on market conditions as of March 17, 2025, the issuance of storm recovery bonds, and the imposition of the storm recovery charge, which I refer to as the storm recovery charge method, are expected to provide quantifiable benefits to the company's customers on a net present value basis as compared to the costs that would have been incurred by customers absent the issuance of storm recovery bonds, which I refer to as the traditional recovery method. In my supplemental direct testimony, I discussed 3 revisions to the quantifiable benefits calculations. First, a correction to address the transmission allocation percentage change, as identified above, which affected the total storm recovery costs and, as a result, the traditional recovery and storm recovery charge method calculations under the quantifiable benefits analysis. Second, a correction to remove an accumulated deferred income tax asset impacting the storm charge recovery method calculation. And third, a revision to remove the beginning storm reserve balance from the storm recharge recovery method calculation. My testimony supports the conclusion that the company's proposed securitization of the storm recovery costs is expected to benefit customers. In my rebuttal testimony, I addressed certain recommendations raised by ORS witnesses Mark Roden and Lane Collin. Those issues have since been resolved through the settlement agreement. In my settlement testimony, I explained that the parties have reached agreement on all outstanding issues in this proceeding. As a result, the company now seeks to securitize $556.211 million in estimated storm recovery costs. I support the calculation of that amount and describe how it reflects the removal of costs already addressed in rebuttal, refined estimates for O&M and capital, and carrying costs addressed by witness Colbreth, and a further $2.983 million reduction in carrying costs in lieu of establishing a contested deferral. I also note that the parties agreed, solely for this proceeding, to the use of the company's proposed methodology to calculate quantifiable net benefits. My updated analysis shows an estimated net present value under the storm recovery charge method of approximately $542.186 million and an updated net present value under the traditional recovery method of approximately $685.382 million. This results in expected savings of approximately $143.196 million, or 20.9%. Barring significant changes in market conditions or terms of storm recovery bond issuances, the results presented in my settlement testimony, including both the quantifiable benefits comparison and the proposed revenue requirement for the proposed storm recovery charge, should closely approximate the final figures. My settlement testimony also addresses the treatment of the deferrals proposed in this proceeding. As reflected in the settlement agreement, all deferral terms are limited to this proceeding and are not intended to have a precedential effect in any future proceeding. Finally, I confirm that the company will allocate transmission and customer costs between South Carolina and North Carolina jurisdictions using the 2022 cost of service study as stated in the settlement agreement and previously accepted in my rebuttal testimony. I conclude my settlement testimony by requesting that the Commission approve the settlement agreement because it is a just and reasonable resolution of all issues in this proceeding, and there is ample evidence to support such approval. This concludes the summary of my pre-filed testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Jiggets. Ms. Colbreth, please state your name for the record.
My name's Melissa B. Colbreth.
And by whom are you employed, in what capacity?
I'm employed by the Duke Energy Business Services. I am the Director of Financial Planning Analysis Business Support.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision direct testimony of 24 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on March 21st, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I have.
And do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision one exhibit to your direct testimony labeled as Colbreth Exhibit 1 that was previously filed with the Commission as an attachment to your pre-filed direct testimony in this docket?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibit?
No, I do not.
Chairman Powers, at this time, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony and exhibit of Ms. Colbreth be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Ms. Colbert will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand. The pre-filed exhibit of witness Colbert identified as direct exhibit Colbert Direct Exhibit 1 will be marked for identification and placed in the record as exhibit number 7.
Ms. Colbert, have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision supplemental direct testimony of 4 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on May 1st, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed supplemental direct testimony?
No, I do not.
If I ask you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision one exhibit to your supplemental direct testimony labeled as Culbreth Supplemental Exhibit 1 that was previously filed with the Commission as attachment to your pre-filed supplemental direct testimony in this docket?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Chair Powers, I move at this time that the pre-filed supplemental direct testimony and exhibit of Ms. Culbreth be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed supplemental direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand. The pre-filed exhibit of witness Culbreth, known as supplemental direct exhibit 1, will be entered into the record as exhibit number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Culbreth, have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision rebuttal testimony of 16 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on June 2nd, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 2 exhibits to your rebuttal testimony labeled as Culbreth Rebuttal Exhibit 1 and Culbreth Rebuttal Exhibit 2 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony in this docket?
Yes, I have.
And do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Chairman Powers, at this time, I move that the pre-filed rebuttal testimony and exhibits of Ms. Culbreth be admitted into the records if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed rebuttal testimony of Ms. Culbreth will be entered in the record as if given orally from the stand. The Culbreth rebuttal exhibits 1 and 2 are marked for identification and will be placed in the record as exhibit number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Culbreth, have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision settlement testimony of 6 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on June 23rd, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I have.
And do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed settlement testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision one exhibit to your supplemental testimony labeled as Culbreth Settlement Exhibit 1 that was previously filed with the Commission as an attachment to your pre-filed settlement testimony in this docket?
Yes, I have.
And do you have any changes or additions to your exhibit?
No, I do not.
Chairman Powers, at this time, I move that the pre-filed settlement testimony and exhibit of Ms. Culbreth be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed settlement testimony of Ms. Culbreth will be entered in the record as if given orally from the stand. The Culbreth Settlement Exhibit number 1 is marked for identification to be placed in the record as exhibit number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Culbreth, have you prepared a summary of your direct, supplemental, rebuttal, and settlement testimony?
Yes, I have.
Would you please deliver that summary at this time?
Certainly. Good morning, Chairman Powers and members of the Commission. In my direct testimony, I discussed the company's actual and estimated incremental operations and maintenance, or O&M, and capital costs incurred as a result of Hurricane Helene, while demonstrating that these costs are prudent, reasonable, and compliant with the statutory framework for storm recovery cost securitization. I begin my direct testimony by outlining finance's role during major storm events, including its involvement in cost tracking, financial analysis, and reporting during storm restoration efforts. I then discuss the company's estimation tool, which is used to develop reasonable estimates of storm recovery costs. I explain the processes used to audit and reconcile actual storm recovery costs with initial estimates to ensure accuracy and transparency. I then explain how the companies have incurred incremental O&M and capital costs in response to the storm and followed the robust processes in place to ensure these costs are accurately estimated, allocated, and accounted for. I further elaborate on the company's use of estimated storm costs for Hurricane Helene and emphasize the safeguards in place to refine and validate these estimates. I conclude that the estimated storm costs are based on a refined methodology which allowed the company to conduct a thorough analysis of incremental cost. Furthermore, I discussed the recommendations made by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff in Duke Energy Progress LLC's 2022 Phase 1 Storm Securitization proceeding related to improvements to streamline the audit process for future storms. Both DEC and DEP have incorporated those recommendations into their audit processes that are used for storms. In my supplemental direct testimony, I provide an updated calculation of DEC's estimated incremental O&M and capital costs for Hurricane Helene due to a correction to DEC's transmission retail allocation percentage for the South Carolina jurisdiction, identified through discovery with the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff. In my rebuttal testimony, I respond to certain recommendations raised by ORS witnesses Michael Seaman Wynn and Lane Collin. Those issues have since been resolved through the settlement agreement. In my settlement testimony, I support the revised estimates for incremental operations and maintenance, or O&M, capital, and associated carrying cost. I explained that these updated estimates reflect refinements based on actual costs through May of 2025 and the removal of a project no longer expected to be completed before bond issuance. Overall, the total adjustments related to these cost components reduced the estimated storm recovery costs by approximately $43.4 million, as reflected in the settlement agreement. I also confirmed that the approximately $1.68 million in cost allocated to customers on the Greenwood rate previously addressed in the company's rebuttal testimony has been removed from the total storm recovery amount as reflected in the settlement agreement. I explain that the settlement agreement adopts the company's methodology for calculating incremental O&M for purposes of this proceeding. The results of that methodology is provided in Culbreth Settlement Exhibit 1. The company and the ORS also agreed to continue discussions ahead of the Hurricane Helene reconciliation proceeding with the goal of reaching consensus on the incremental O&M methodology. I conclude my settlement testimony by requesting that the Commission approve the settlement agreement because it is a just and reasonable resolution of all issues in this proceeding, and there is ample evidence to support such an approval. This concludes the summary of my pre-filed testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Culbreth. Chairman Powers, the panel at this time is available for questioning by the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Any questions from DCA? ORS? You ladies have been busy.
Yes, sir.
Any commissioner questions?
Chair Powers.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Mrs. Jiggets, your testimony is that the settlement agreement provides quantifiable net benefits for customers. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner.
And would you say that the settlement agreement provides more benefits than the original proposal?
The quantifiable benefits are consistent. They're actually a little bit higher. If you look at my direct testimony that was initially filed, I had quantifiable benefits of approximately 18%. With the adjustments that have been made throughout the various proceeding and finally with the settlement, we're at 20.9% quantifiable benefits to customers as a result of this transaction.
Okay. And Ms. Colbert, the removal of the $1.68 million for the Greenwood rate, is that a permanent removal? Its costs are not going to be socialized to other South Carolina customers?
I'll actually let Ms. Jiggets handle that one.
Commissioner, that is a permanent removal. We will not be requesting recovery of that amount from other customers in South Carolina region.
Okay. And they won't be requested in a future rate case or a fuel proceeding or anything of that nature?
To my knowledge, not at this time, no. They will not be requested from anyone in the future.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Belcher.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Jiggets, I just want to clarify, my understanding of the settlement agreement and the letter that was filed on May 2nd, which I think has been entered as hearing exhibit number 2, the Duke foregoing these costs related to the customers on the Greenwood rate, that is just for this proceeding. It is not an admission by Duke that is appropriate going forward. Is that correct? In other cases?
Correct. So we're not seeking Greenwood recovery for this proceeding, but that does not mean that if we have future storms that impact South Carolina, that we would forgo recovery of Greenwood costs in future proceedings.
Okay, thank you. With regard to some of the deferrals, there's going to be has Duke Energy Carolinas filed it? They hadn't filed their rate case yet. We've got a letter of intent.
We're providing the notice that we.
Okay, we've got a letter of intent.
You've got a letter of intent, correct.
But there will be an upcoming Duke Carolinas rate case.
Correct.
Later this year.
Yes, ma'am.
And with regard to some of the deferrals, interest rates could change depending on what comes out of that rate case. Is that correct? On the deferral accounts?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Belson. Any further commissioner questions? Ms. Jiggets, just a couple of things. And of course, you stated in your summary and in the settlement agreement that this is not precedential in any way. And Ms. Culpers, maybe you could address this too, because you apparently have a big job in determining future costs and making estimates and that sort of thing. What do you, either one of you or both of you, see as some sort of future process that could eliminate having to have a hearing every time we have a storm? Is there some sort of committee at Duke or someone working on coming up with some sort of standard way to handle these things in the future? Because we're going to have storms. We're going to have them. I hate it, but we are. Could any of you speak to that?
I'll speak to that a little bit, Commissioner. Like two things that immediately come to mind that we do when we come before this commission for a rate case is that we always do an adjustment to reflect an amount that we consider to be storm normal. So what are the normal costs that we would expect to incur year over year with respect to storms? So obviously as storm activity increases or moves, that'll be reflected in that adjustment. Something else that we have in South Carolina to address our storm exposure is our storm reserve. As you all know, we have a storm reserve established in the state currently that's subject to a $50 million limit, and we're contributing or collecting from customers about $5 million a year right now based on the last rate case. So certainly that's another avenue that we could explore with respect to, is that $50 million adequate to reflect the storm exposure that we have in this jurisdiction? Does it need to be increased so that if we have more in that reserve, we would not be coming before you to address storms through securitization? Obviously, I don't know that the storm reserve would be able to accommodate something the nature of Helene, which was just so significant for this jurisdiction, but those are two things that come to mind with respect to how we could address ongoing storm exposure in this jurisdiction going forward.
Well, and I know with your service area, it's not the coast. It's where it is, and this is very, very unusual for you to be dealing with this. Is there any sort of things that can, as far as customers, besides a warning that a storm's coming, any sort of preparation or education that can be provided?
I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer.
I know I have a house down. I have a house down near Beaufort, and when I built the house, they made me buy storm covers for all the windows and doors and everything. That was part of the city's requirements. And that would not apply to your service area, but what sort of warning systems or anything that you think would be helpful that you don't have? And I'm just asking for you to look into it, how we handle future storms.
Okay. I think that's something we could definitely take back to the company to explore.
Thank you.
What's possible.
Chair Powell,
Commissioner Caston.
if along those lines, the big storm, you don't normally think in terms of Asheville having to deal with hurricanes, but, we are a coastal state. And I guess it's the second one in the last few years, which, And we say abnormal. I don't know what normal is. I wasn't born 300 years ago or 500, I don't know. But does the company or has the company, I guess, thinking about this, whether it's hardening, how to prepare, what should we be putting in a storm reserve fund, consider such as, say, in the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, there's been significant growth in the service area. Would you agree? On the coastal plain, the mountains, upstate South Carolina, significant industrial growth. So with those things in mind, not that this storm maybe had more velocity or anything than maybe other storms, but because of where we live, the growth that we've had, does the company, is that considered? I mean, comparing things to 20, 30, 40 years ago may not be the best thing to do. Is that true? Does that make sense?
Your question does make sense. Honestly, Witness Guyton, as Director of Asset Management, is probably the best
The
person.
one that just left?
Yes, sir, sorry.
That happens to me all the time.
Sorry, yeah.
He's right back there.
I was going to say, commissioners, we're more than happy to recall him if you'd like to have some of this dialogue here.
Well, let's go through all these and let's see. And I thank you. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Powers, I have one follow-up to your question, if you don't mind. As agreed to in our settlement, the company and the ORS do plan to meet monthly to talk about our incremental O&M methodology, and that is a very detailed analysis. As stated in our settlement agreement, we have agreed on a methodology for now. When we come back for the actualization or the reconciliation proceeding, we will have talked to work through those details, have conversations, exchange calculations. That will also benefit this process, I think, as we establish what that methodology ought to be, supporting calculations and a repeatable method. So that's another, I guess, improvement we'll make as these storms come to our territory.
So thank you so much for adding that. Any further commissioner questions? Hearing none, any redirect?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, you ladies may step down.
Thank you.
All right. Chairman Powers, Duke Energy Carolinas calls Jacqueline Moore and Nicholas Sparrows to the stand.
Ms. Moore, if you'll raise your right hand, please. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And Mr. Sparrows, do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
right, starting with you, Ms. Moore, can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Jacqueline Moore.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm a Rates and Regulatory Strategy Manager for Duke Energy Business Services, testifying on behalf of DEC.
Thank you. And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision direct testimony of 12 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on March 21st, 2025 in this docket?
Yes.
And do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
I do not.
If I ask the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 2 exhibits to your direct testimony labeled as More Exhibit 1 and More Exhibit 2 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed direct testimony in this docket?
Yes.
All right. Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No.
Chairman Powers, at this time, I move that the pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits of Ms. Moore be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Ms. Moore will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand. The pre-filed exhibits of Ms. Moore, identified as Moore Direct Exhibits 1 and 2, are marked for identification and placed in the record as exhibit number 11.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision rebuttal testimony of 3 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on June 2nd, 2025 in this docket?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony?
No.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 2 exhibits to your rebuttal testimony labeled as More Rebuttal Exhibit 1 and More Rebuttal Exhibit 2 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony in this docket?
Yes.
And do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No.
Thank you. Chairman Powers, at this time, I move that the pre-filed rebuttal testimony and exhibits of Ms. Moore be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed rebuttal testimony of Ms. Moore will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand. The Moore rebuttal exhibits 1 and 2 are as identified are marked for identification and placed in the record as exhibit number 12.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Moore, have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision settlement testimony of 4 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on June 23rd, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed settlement testimony?
No.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 2 exhibits to your settlement testimony labeled as More Settlement Exhibits 1 and 2 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed settlement testimony in this docket?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Chairman Powers, at this time I move that the pre-filed settlement testimony and exhibits of Ms. Moore be admitted into the record as given orally from the stand today.
The pre-filed settlement testimony of Ms. Moore will be entered in the record as given orally from the stand. The pre-filed exhibits of witness Moore, identified as settlement exhibits 1 and 2, are marked for identification and placed in the record as exhibit number 13.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, have you prepared a summary of direct rebuttal and settlement testimony?
I have.
And would you please deliver that summary at this time?
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Powers and members of the Commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to demonstrate that the storm recovery charge rates the company proposes reflect appropriate rate-making principles and result in an equitable basis for recovery of the company's revenue requirements across and within each customer class and rate schedule. Specifically, my testimony focuses on outlining the steps followed in calculating the proposed storm recovery charges by rate class, which includes utilizing the allocation factors from the company's most recent rate case proceeding to allocate the revenue requirement to each customer rate class. My testimony addresses the tariff revisions needed to implement the storm recovery charge for the company. However, the company will not seek Commission approval of the tariff sheet until after the final terms of the issuance of the storm recovery bonds have been established. In my rebuttal testimony, I provide the updated proposed storm recovery charge by rate class and updated tariff to address the recommendations of the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff, witnesses Collin and Seaman Wynn. Specifically, the company agreed to utilize the 2022 cost of service study in this proceeding and remove customers on the Greenwood rate schedule from the amounts to be securitized. Finally, in my settlement testimony, I provide the updated proposed storm recovery charge by rate class and the revised tariff sheet resulting from the settlement agreement. I conclude my settlement testimony by requesting that the Commission approve the settlement agreement because it is a just and reasonable resolution of all issues in this proceeding, and there is ample evidence to support such an approval. This concludes the summary of my pre-filed testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Mr. Sparrows, can you please state your name for the record?
Nicholas Spiros,
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
Duke Energy Business Services as Director of Accounting.
Thank you. And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision a direct testimony of 17 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on March 21st, 2025 in this docket?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
And have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision 2 exhibits to your direct testimony labeled as Sparrows Exhibit 1 and Sparrows Exhibit 2 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed direct testimony in this docket?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No.
Thank you. Chairman Powers, at this time I move that the pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits of Mr. Sparrows be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Sparrows will be entered the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Sparrows, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes.
Would you please deliver that summary at this time?
Yes.
Were there exhibits as well?
Yes, there was just exhibits on direct.
Okay. The pre-filed direct exhibits 1 and 2 identified as Sparrows Direct exhibits 1 and 2 will be entered into the record as exhibit number 14.
Thank you, Chairman. All right, Mr. Sparrows, would you please deliver that summary at this time?
Yes, I can. Good morning, Chairman Powers and members of the Commission. In my direct testimony, I propose the mechanism and corresponding form to be used in making periodic formula-based true-ups to the company's proposed storm recovery charge, and to present the accounting entries that will be required for the same. There will be a single storm recovery charge dedicated for the storm recovery bonds issued on behalf of Duke Energy Carolinas. The storm recovery charge will be paid by all existing and future retail customers receiving transmission or distribution service or both from DEC or its successors or assignees. The amended storm securitization statute requires the company to periodically true up this charge to ensure that customers pay no more or no less than what is required. As a result, the company must file with the Commission at least annually an application requesting administrative approval to make the applicable true-up adjustments. The company proposes to file a new estimated revenue requirement for the company's storm recovery bonds at least semi-annually and then quarterly beginning 12 months prior to the scheduled final payment date of the latest maturing tranche of the storm recovery bonds of a specific series. The true-up process is consistent with Duke Energy Progress' true-up process for the storm recovery charge previously approved by this Commission in dockets number 2023-89E. In addition to the semi-annual true-up adjustments, the company, acting as servicer for the storm recovery bonds, seeks authority to make interim true-up adjustments. These true-up adjustments will be made at any time as necessary to ensure the recovery of revenues is sufficient to provide for the timely payment of storm recovery bonds associated with the financing costs. These interim true-ups are permitted by the amended storm securitization statute, and they will follow the same process as the semi-annual true-ups and are viewed favorably by the rating agencies and bondholders. And they were also approved by this Commission in dockets 2023-89E. With respect to the accounting treatment of the storm recovery charge, the company will conduct the storm recovery financing through a bankruptcy remote special purpose entity, or SPE, that is a wholly owned subsidiary of the company. Once the storm recovery charge is received from customers, those collections will be remitted to and recorded as revenues at the special purpose entity. However, because the company does not track customer charges on a daily basis, it will remit estimated daily collections of storm recovery charges to the SPE. Finally, I briefly discussed the accounting treatment for the proposed storm reserve funding amount and how the company plans to book and to reflect changes associated with estimated storm costs versus actual cost to be securitized. This concludes the summary of my pre-filed direct testimony.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sparrows. Chairman Powers, at this time, Mr. Sparrows and Ms. Moore are available for questions by the commission.
Thank you very much. Any questions from DCA, ORS? Any commissioner questions? Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Chair Powers, and good morning. Thanks for being here. My question is one that neither one of you are perfect to receive for a couple of reasons, but I really couldn't identify who might be better. And so one of those reasons is your DEC and not DEP, but DEP has had the experience of putting these charges on customers' bills and how it was identified. And I know that's not your job either, but I didn't find a better, I guess it's where the question was triggered. It was in reading your testimony as to whether there were lessons learned that were that we could all benefit from through your sister organization in terms of identifying a charge on a bill and how customers receive that. So I'm asking the question, I totally am making it easier for you to say, it's not your realm, but just wanted to see what I could learn.
I think we did take your advice in our last proceeding in the DEP bill. As you know, the storm recovery charge has to be a separate line item on the bill. And then there's also a blurb on there about the storm recovery charge. It's called a bill backer that'll appear on each bill. So we do have a markup of the DEC bill if you would like to see it.
Is it in testimony?
It is not in testimony.
Okay.
But it would be very similar to what we did in DEP, South Carolina.
And you found that successful?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then I did ask the right person. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Any further commissioner questions? Hearing none, you may step
Chair
down.
Powers.
Commissioner Williams.
Could we have that submitted, and could we reserve a exhibit for that mock-up of the bill?
Sorry, Commissioner. Yes, we can. We have a mock-up for you. We can bring it up. Would you like for me to make a motion that it be admitted into the record? And we're happy to provide.
I'll leave that up to you.
I can show it to the parties real quick, and then maybe we can put it in the record for you.
That would be number 14, wouldn't it? Any objection or questions from either DCA or ORS? No objection. All right. As I said, you may, if there's no more commissioner questions, you may step down. I think we're going to take our morning break at this point in time. It's about 5 after 11. If we could be back about 11:15. That exhibit, that markup will be placed in the record, identified and placed in the record as exhibit number 15. Thank you very much. We're in recess. Welcome back to the Public Service Commission. We are continuing the case as securitization, docket number 2025-65E, Duke Energy Carolinas LLC petition for storm securitization financing order. Duke is still presenting their case, and please proceed.
Mr. Smino, if you'll raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you, sir. And Mr. Heath, if you'll raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Heath, good morning.
Good morning.
Please state your name and your business address for the record, please.
My name is Thomas J. Heath, Jr. My business address is 525 South Tryon Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Duke Energy Business Services, a service company affiliate of Duke Energy Carolinas, as Corporate Finance Director.
Mr. Heath, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision direct testimony consisting of 48 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on March 21, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Heath, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision 7 exhibits to your direct testimony labeled as Heath Exhibit 1, Heath Exhibit 2A, Heath Exhibit 2B, Heath Exhibit 2C, Heath Exhibit 2D, Heath Exhibit 2E, and Heath Exhibit 3 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed direct testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your Heath exhibits?
No, I do not.
Chair Powers, at this time, I move that Mr. Heath's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that Mr. Heath's direct exhibits be marked and entered into the record.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Heath will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand. The pre-filed exhibits of witness Heath identified as Exhibits 1, 2A through 2E, and 3 will be identified and placed in the record as Exhibit number 16.
Thank you. Mr. Heath, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision rebuttal testimony consisting of 33 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on June 2nd, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision 1 exhibit to your rebuttal testimony labeled as Heath Rebuttal Exhibit 1 that was previously filed with this Commission as an attachment to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibit?
No, I do not.
Chair Powers, at this time, I move that Mr. Heath's pre-filed rebuttal testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that Mr. Heath's rebuttal exhibit be marked and entered into the record.
All right, Mr. Heath's rebuttal testimony will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand. As to Heath's rebuttal Exhibit 1 and the previous exhibits 1, 2A through 2E, and 3, were there any objections to those being placed in the record by any parties? Thank you very much. The rebuttal exhibit will be placed in the record as Exhibit number 17.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Heath, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision settlement testimony consisting of 8 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on June 23rd, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed settlement testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Heath, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision 1 exhibit to your settlement testimony labeled as Heath Settlement Exhibit 1 that was previously filed with the Commission as an attachment to your settlement testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Chair Powers, at this time, I move that Mr. Heath's pre-filed settlement testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that Mr. Heath's settlement exhibit be marked and entered into the record.
The pre-filed settlement testimony will be entered the record as if given orally from the stand. As to the settlement exhibit 1, are there any objections? Hearing none, it will be marked as exhibit number 18.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move on to Mr. Cimino. Mr. Cimino, please state your name and your business address for the record.
Turn on your microphone, Mr. Cimino. Still not
press
on. There. Thank you.
My name is Vincent A. Cimino Jr., and I work at RBC Capital Markets. You asked about my address. I'm sorry. It's 200 Vesey Street, New York, New York, 10281.
Thank you, Mr. Cimino. And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am a managing director with RBC Capital Markets in the Securitization Group.
Thank you, Mr. Cimino. Did you prepare or cause to be prepared, under your supervision, direct testimony consisting of 53 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on March 21st, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Cimino, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision 4 exhibits to your direct testimony labeled as Cimino Exhibit 1, Cimino Exhibit 2, Cimino Exhibit 3, and Cimino Exhibit 4 that were previously filed with the Commission as attachments to your pre-filed direct testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Thank you. At this time, Chair Powers, I move that Mr. Cimino's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that Mr. Cimino's direct exhibits are marked and entered into the record.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Cimino will be entered into the record as given from the stand. Cimino direct exhibits 1 through 4. Is there any objection to those exhibits? Hearing none, they will be entered into the record as exhibit number 19.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Cimino, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision rebuttal testimony consisting of 20 pages that was previously filed with the Commission on June 2nd, 2025 in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision 1 exhibit to your rebuttal testimony labeled as Cimino Rebuttal Exhibit 1 that was previously filed with the Commission as an attachment to your pre-filed rebuttal testimony in this docket?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or additions to your exhibit?
No, I do not.
Okay. Chair Powers, at this time, I move that Mr. Cimino's pre-filed rebuttal testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that Mr. Cimino's rebuttal exhibit be marked and entered into the record.
The pre-filed rebuttal testimony of Mr. Cimino will be entered the record as if given orally from the stand. The Cimino Rebuttal Exhibit 1, is there any objection? Hearing none, it will be entered into the record, marked for identification into the record as exhibit number 20.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Heath, have you prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I have.
Mr. Cimino, have you?
Yes, I have.
Would you please deliver your summaries at this time to the Commission, beginning with Mr. Heath?
Sure. Good morning, Chairman Powers and members of the Commission. In my direct testimony, I explained the financial impacts of Hurricane Helene on the company and note that credit rating agencies' methodologies and assessments support securitization as an effective tool for recovering storm recovery costs. I also discussed some of the legal and structural aspects of the proposed transaction that will benefit the company and its customers. I explained that the transaction as proposed will ensure that Hurricane Helene costs qualify as off credit, which will be viewed favorably by rating agencies. The rating agencies' favorable views of the company's credit quality help to ensure it has access to capital on reasonable terms, which in turn helps to keep costs low for customers. I explained how the transaction as proposed will provide quantifiable net benefits to customers as compared to traditional recovery methods. I also provide estimates of the company's upfront and ongoing financing costs. My direct testimony also describes the pre-bond issuance review process, including the establishment of a bond advisory team and the company's proposed issuance advice letter process. Once the final terms of the storm recovery bonds are determined, the company will file a final issuance advice letter with the Commission. This process will include certain certifications from the company, the primary underwriters, and the Commission's qualified independent third party that the issuance of the bonds will provide quantifiable net benefits to customers and result in the lowest storm recovery charges consistent with market conditions at the time the storm recovery bonds are priced and the terms set forth in the financing order. I explained that the company's proposed pre-bond issuance process is very similar to the one used in Duke Energy Progress's 2024 storm securitization transaction, which was successfully executed last year. In my rebuttal testimony, I addressed various recommendations from the ORS and DCA witnesses. I note that all parties to the proceeding generally support the company's proposed issuance of storm recovery bonds and the draft financing order, but expressed concern that adopting certain recommendations could jeopardize the success of the transaction. Those issues have been resolved through the settlement agreement. In my settlement testimony, I support terms related to the structure and operation of the bond advisory team and the company's capital contribution to the special purpose entity. I explain how the updated storm recovery cost amount results in a corresponding reduction in certain estimated financing cost categories. I also outline other key elements of the settlement agreement, such as providing the qualified independent third party with real-time access to order book data and certifications to be provided as part of the issuance advice letter process. I conclude that the settlement agreement is a constructive resolution of all issues in this proceeding, will help ensure that the proposed transaction will provide quantifiable benefits to customers while successfully enabling DEC to recover its prudently incurred costs. The settlement agreement is therefore in the public interest, and I respectfully request the Commission approve it. This concludes the summary of my pre-filed testimony.
Thank you. Mr. Cimino?
Good morning, Chairman Powers and members of the Commission. In my direct testimony, I provide background information on utility securitization transactions and discuss the basic elements of the company's proposed storm recovery bonds. I present the company's proposed preliminary storm recovery bond issuance structure and discuss related structuring and marketing considerations. I describe the primary rating agency criteria for utility securitizations to obtain the desired AAA ratings on the bonds, and I discuss several key commercial terms of the proposed storm recovery bonds that the company expects will be required for a successful transaction. Finally, I describe key commercial terms of proposed storm recovery bonds and critical provisions of the financing order. Specifically, I explain the financing order must be crafted in a manner that will enable the storm recovery bonds to achieve the highest possible credit ratings. Further, the financing order must be sufficient to convince potential investors that over the life of the transaction, there is minimal risk of political and regulatory interference that may delay payments on the bonds or change the protections built into the financing order. I testify that the structure recommended in the company's petition and explained in supporting testimony is designed to result in a financing order that satisfies these requirements and will deliver net quantifiable benefits for customers. In my rebuttal testimony, I respond to certain positions and recommendations raised by DCA witness Rothschild. It is my understanding that the company has reached a settlement agreement with DCA and ORS to resolve the issues that were previously in dispute. While I was not a party to those negotiations, I have reviewed the terms relevant to my testimony and believe they are reasonable and should not impair the ability to meet the objectives of achieving the lowest storm recovery charges consistent with market conditions at the time of pricing. This concludes the summary of my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Cimino. Chair Powers, at this time, Mr. Heath and Mr. Camino are available for questioning by the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Any questions from DCA, ORS? Commissioner questions? Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Heath, this is for you.
Okay.
So prior to the settlement agreement, there was at least one witness that expressed concern about the customer protections during this process. And does the company feel that, as modified by the terms of the settlement agreement, that the terms of the proposed transaction provide adequate protections to all classes of customers as this proceeding moves to the next phase?
Yes, we do.
And do you think that there are any terms of the settlement agreement that provide less benefits or less protections to the customers than the original proposal?
No, they do not.
All right. Let me ask a question about the bond advisory team. Just a little bit confused. Looking at page 5 of your settlement testimony and lines 8 through 13, and there's a discussion about who are the members of the bond advisory team, and then there's a sentence there that says parties agree that employees, staff attorneys, consultants, and advisors of DEC, the QITP, ORS, and DCA shall not be designated formal members of the BAT, but may participate in BAT meetings and proceedings as needed. I don't know, to me that just doesn't, I mean, I'm wondering who is going to be on the bond advisory team, and then how does that work with the as needed participation?
So there are formal designated members from each of those parties who will be official members of the bond advisory team. So myself, as a designated employee of Duke Energy or Duke Energy Business Services on behalf of Duke Energy Carolinas, will be a formal member of the bond advisory team process. If I bring in someone else from Duke to provide some additional insight on a particular matter, they're coming in as a non-designated official member, if that helps. And so there may be some similar folks from DCA, ORS that have their designated people who are going to be participating in substantially all or all of the bond advisory team meetings. There may be other folks that they bring in for particular discussion topics that are there to offer perspectives and hear the discussion, but are not official designated members as those other folks are. Does that help?
Yes, sir, it does. Appreciate that. That's all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Caston.
Thank you. And still morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Paragraph B21 settlement, provides certifications proposed be provided by the underwriter should be delivered without material qualifications, which I'm pretty sure I understand what material qualifications means, but I guess just to make sure I understand it, could you provide just a few examples of what constitutes a material qualification?
Sure. So I would say that if I were to go back and look at certifications that were delivered in the 2024 transaction by the company, underwriters, QITP, I don't see anything that really rose to the level of a material qualification. So I would give that comfort back to the 2024 transaction. I think the certification that we delivered as a company clearly did not include really any sort of qualification. Like we said, we did these activities and we achieved the statutory cost objectives, right? Quantifiable benefits, lowest storm recovery charges consistent with market conditions. As we were going through testimony, I think there were some questions about did some of those the qualifications from underwriters potentially have some sort of qualifying language. We've agreed that we will talk about those qualifications and the content of those qualifications through the bond advisory team process to ensure that there are in fact no sorts of significant or material qualifications in those letters.
I'd agree with what Mr. Heath just said, and I was part of the last transaction, and although we weren't the lead underwriter, we were a co-underwriter on that transaction. As part of that transaction, I did sign a certification, and I would concur with what Mr. Heath just said, that I don't believe there were any material qualifications in the certification I signed. I'm not sure if the other underwriter's certification was identical to mine. I do know that this was part of the settlement negotiation, and I was not part of that negotiation. So it is unclear what the issues are or were about what those material qualifications might be or what they were thinking. It might not have even been in the certification that I signed. As Mr. Heath just said, we thought that the one used last year worked. It had, I hesitate to use the word qualification. There were provisions in this sort of a certification where we as an underwriter depend on information that's provided to us, typically by the company. We don't verify that information. So you'll see in the letter that we just point that out, that we have referenced and received this information from the company and haven't verified it. I don't call that material, but
Okay.
that's all I could think of at this moment.
Makes
That
sense.
helps.
Thank you. And along those lines, will there be any opportunity for the members of the bond advisory team or bond affiliates to review the proposed certification from the underwriters to ensure the spirit of that B21 has
Yes.
been met?
Yes.
And we are not selected as an underwriter, but if we were, we'd be open to having those discussions with the BAT.
You agree with that, Mr. Heath?
I do, yeah.
I do. And the term of the settlement agreement does not appear to extend to the QITP as part of the settlement agreement. Would it be the settling party's understanding that the QITP's certification should also be provided without material qualifications?
I would say that's probably an expectation of the commission.
That was my understanding of the negotiations as well, is that only Dukes had, according to the issue, no qualifications. So I believe what you just said is true, Commissioner.
Well, thank you both, gentlemen, and I hope you have a good flight back.
Thank you.
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Chair Powers, and thank you, gentlemen. I want to follow up just a little bit more. You may have covered this with Commissioner Thomas, but I understood the I think we had two sentences that went together, and he was asking about the relationship of those two, and the sentence that ends as needed that talks about the parties agree that there may be others. There may be others. My question really is, that sentence ends as needed. Who determines who needs what those other parties to participate?
I mean, it would really be up to the individual members of the bond advisory team. So if we were having discussions and, in one meeting, someone on the bond advisory team asked us to have Mr. Spiros maybe come in and talk more about the true up form, and that we would bring Mr. Spiros into that discussion. But he would come in and just make that presentation, but he would not be a official member of the bond advisory team making that presentation. Or ORS may require someone to come in and hear that discussion from their accounting and finance team to understand that better. And so that person may not, again, be a designated official member of the bond advisory team. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
And what I heard you say is that really each member of the bond advisory team could decide independently that they have an as-needed individual that
Correct.
they need to call in.
Right.
That clarifies it.
Okay.
Switching gears, I want to go to something that Chair Powers talked about that I'd like from your perspective to hear your thoughts, your experience on how we prepare for the next securitization. Is there as you go into this, are there thoughts about, could we end up in a circumstance where we have two securitizations within, on a customer's bill at one time? Is that something, I don't wish that, but I just wonder how we, given what we just experienced, how we prepare and use this as a learning experience, as you all did with the DEP securitization.
It is a real possibility. So for both DEP, we did a financing over for 20 years.
Right.
And those charges are on DEP customers' bills for 20 years. We're proposing 20 years is the term here for DEC as well. So yeah, within 20 years, there will be, certainly within 20 years, there will be more storms, right? So yeah, there will likely be times where there are multiple securitization charges on customer bills. I think that was the question, right?
Well, and it's really just, I don't know what the answer is, but how we all in the utility service and regulation business think about, and I heard the testimony earlier about how you minimize that, how you think about the storm reserve, that could play a big piece of it.
Yes.
So the question really is, have you thought about that situation, and how do you prepare for it?
Yeah, reserves are certainly one way to mitigate multiple securitizations. So one of the panels earlier were talking about this proceeding or this transaction will replenish a reserve that's been depleted, right? Replenish it, or at least get it back to zero, I believe, my understanding. There would be an opportunity potentially in a future transaction, both either for DEC or for DEP, if whenever the next storm event happens. I know we all hope that that's multiple years from now, right? But when that event were to happen, if we were to securitize that cost, we could propose. We would ask this commission and to approve, and we would ask the other parties to agree with the position, but to propose pre-funded storm reserves. Right, so we would, if we have a storm that cost us $200 million, we could come in and finance that $200 million, and then we could do some level of storm reserve type study and say, well, we can do maybe another 50 or another $100 million of a pre-funded reserve. So we would increase that issuance to 300 million from 200, and we could take those. One option is we could take that incremental $100 million and put it into a trust that's set aside to just fund the next storm event. That's one potential option.
I'm not sure if you said this, but are you suggesting that could happen through securitization?
I believe it could. I would have to go back and take a closer look at the statute, because we've got multiple statutes in multiple jurisdictions, and some may allow reserve funding and some may not. So I'd have to go back and look at the specifics of this statute. But that would be one option.
Okay. And my final question, in the proposed financing order, you probably do not need to look at it, but item number 49 ends by talking about the commission agrees with the parties that in connection with the submission of issuance advice letter information designated by DEC or any other party as confidential shall be provided to the commission under seal or in closed session.
Which number is that? 40?
It's number 49.
49. Do you have a page reference?
Well, it's page 26 of 112. Okay. If
that's where I am. I'm trying to actually find that actual text. So is it where it starts after the issuance advice letter has been submitted?
That is it. I'm glad you found it.
Okay.
And it ends by recognizing that confidential information shall be provided to the commission under seal or in closed session. Did we use a closed session with the DEP securitization?
That is my understanding.
Do you anticipate that we would use a closed session?
I would hope so, because there will be significant matters that we would talk about in terms of how how the deal progressed through the marketing process and how did we go from initial pricing thoughts to the different stages of guidance and launch and those sorts of things. And so I think a lot of that information is really transaction specific and really, that information being in a public domain could be harmful for this transaction, but future transactions as well.
Okay. If I could add,
Please
I think
do.
it's completely up to the commission. As Mr. Heath just said, the BAT, it monitors the process from day one,
right,
hand in hand. And then to the extent that the commission has questions at that stage, I think that's your opportunity to have a session, ask away. I believe that occurred in the 2024. I think it satisfied the commission and they accepted the IAL. I believe, so that's open to you and it's at your discretion or any of the commission's discretion, as I understand it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the clarifications and the education, and thank you for being here.
Thank you,
Hope it
Commissioner.
helped.
Mr. Heath, going back to what was raised by Commissioner Thomas, the term "as needed." When I hear the term "as needed," my first thought is, what do I need? Or in this case, what does this commission need? What reason would there be for our qualified expert to not be allowed in the room during the finalization of this process?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. I think that's an important thing to point out in the settlement agreement. So if we go back to that section,
because I think in the last one they were not allowed in the room at the some of the session.
ORS was the
ORS
served as a
appointed
qualified
someone,
independent
and
third
that
party.
Third party was not in the room. I feel like my guy should be in the room.
The ORS representatives were involved in all of our discussions, throughout the bond advisory team process, from the time we had a financing order and we assembled the bond advisory team, all the way through the pricing of the bonds. The ORS and their consultant, Drexel Hamilton, were involved in all of those discussions. So I would say if we go back to this part on that we're talking about here, page. I'm trying to find the page number here.
When you find it, please identify it for us too.
I will. We had it right in front of us earlier.
Page 12.
Is he looking in the settlement agreement or in the proposed financing order? Because it's on page 12 of the settlement agreement.
Do you have is it bullet number 8? Is it 18? No. I think we were looking at my testimony earlier, right? Where we talked about, so the avoidance of doubt, the parties agree that employees, staff, attorneys, consultants, and advisors of DEC, the QITP, ORS, DC are not formal members of the bond advisory team. So in this case, in this proceeding, the QITP.
I'm sorry, can he give the reference that he's?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So this is number 14 and 15 on page 12 under the caption of bond advisory team. And so this is that discussion I was making earlier, and I think this is maybe a little bit more clear in my testimony, that there are designated employees of each of those parties, DEC, the QITP, ORS, DCA, who are official members of the bond advisory team. So in this case, whoever the QITP is will be one of those official members. If that particular individual needs some additional assistance, they could bring another party into the bond advisory team discussions, but that additional person would not be an official designated member of the bond advisory. It would be that original designated member is the official member of the bond advisory team.
So the QITP can be in the room.
The QITP is an official member.
Okay.
So, Mr. Heath, his question was the QIPP can be in the room, and that's a yes.
Yes.
Let's just be clear. That's a yes.
In the room, on calls.
Okay.
Right, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And just to identify it properly, what we've asked you to look at was the settlement agreement hearing Exhibit 1, just for the
Correct.
record. All right. Any further commissioner questions? Hearing none, you may step down. Any redirect, I'm sorry.
I just have maybe one or two, Chair.
Okay.
Chairman Powers,
Commissioner Caston first, Mr. Robinson.
if I may, one of you said I could call back Mr. Guyton, and the chair did. I had time to kind of gather my thoughts and write down something that might be a good question, but if I may, could I ask Mr. Guyton those questions?
Commissioner, we'd love for you to ask Mr. Guyton, absolutely.
Did you ask him?
Commissioner, because he's sworn, we did not.
Good answer.
Proceed, Mr. Robinson. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Heath, question for you. Do you recall the conversation with Commissioner Caston regarding what constitutes as a material qualification of a certification?
I do.
And Mr. Heath, I think you said this, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. If there is a member of the bond advisory team that has some considerations around whether a particular qualification is material or immaterial, that will get addressed as part of the bond advisory team process, will it not?
Absolutely.
And in fact, if my memory serves, will the bond advisory team members have access to the certifications in advance of them being issued for consideration?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Thank you. Other thing I wanted to also address to you, Mr. Heath, in terms of to be even clearer, the commission's designated qualified independent third party not only can but will be in the room throughout all the
Yes.
discussions. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Any questions as a result of the redirect?
No questions. I just had a clarifying questions about the exhibits for
Okay.
this panel. I can go. So, did we enter the mock-up customer bill into the record, and was that hearing exhibit 15 or? Okay, thank you.
It was 15, yes. All right. Gentlemen, you may step down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Powers, at the request of the commission, the companies would like to recall Mr. Guyton to the stand.
Thank you very much.
And it's my understanding that Mr. Guyton is still under oath, so he is available for questions.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Guyton.
Certainly.
As the service areas, as Duke's service area has grown, say, since 2000 or whatever time period. First of all, do you agree that I guess, if you would say the tax base, the value of that service area, the industrial complex that's there, has increased significantly in the last decade, 2 decades, 3 decades? Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a fair statement. What I can certainly say is the number of customers that we serve, industrial, commercial, and residential, have all grown and continue to grow.
Good. And relative to the company's infrastructure to serve those customers, has it grown proportionally? In other words, have there been new or additional transmission, distribution, I was going to say treatment, but I don't think you guys do that anymore, generation and such?
They have. That's our obligation to serve as new customers enter our affiliates' territories, both here in the Carolinas. We do extend facilities and service. It may be small, it may be close to existing facilities, or it may be substantial, depending on the load and the distance from our existing facilities. But we do that every day.
Okay, and thinking about the questions that were asked Mr. Heath, relative to, what can we do, what do we do, and tough question. But from the company's perspective, with that knowledge, I mean, you have that information relative to preparing for the reality that the service area has grown, your capital investment has grown. There's just more stuff there, and we most likely will have more storms. Is there anything different that the company is doing relative to planning, preparing, and such as that?
There is, and what I would say is I'll use the term defense in depth for that. There's not only our emergency response plan, which I described in testimony, and that's how we respond or react to a storm event from that perspective, but also the work we do during blue sky days, and some examples I can give for distribution specifically, and I can make some comments on transmission as well. Before this commission, before I've talked about the self-optimizing grid or the automation that we're deploying on our distribution system on the circuit backbone, we continue to expand that daily. I think I looked actually earlier this week in DEC, South Carolina, we are rapidly approaching 50% of the customers we serve underneath that automation umbrella from that perspective. And that provides some significant resilience. It minimizes the impact of an event to customers along that circuit, but also allows us to restore much quicker from that perspective. We have done undergrounding projects in DEC, South Carolina as well in the future. All of these things have costs, so there's certainly a recognition that as we make additional efforts to harden the grid and increase resiliency, there are associated costs. So we're very mindful of that from that perspective. On the transmission side, I'm aware that historically there have been wooden structures, 8 structures in the past on transmission. That is no longer a transmission standard for DEC or for any of our Duke affiliates. It is concrete and steel is the new standard from a transmission perspective, and even a maintenance standard. If they have a wooden pole not related to storm that just needs to be replaced, it's not replaced with wood. It's replaced with ductile iron, I believe, is their standard in DEC here. So those are some examples of things we're doing. I'll offer one more, not just from a storm perspective, but just what's projected to be increasing air temperatures. Our equipment, especially transformers and substations, even the transformers in neighborhoods, they have to cool themselves. They create heat. We have to dissipate that heat for that to operate properly. Recognizing that it appears that ambient temperatures will continue to rise over time, we're looking long-term. This is not a short-term thing, but looking long-term at what types of material specification changes do we need to make on our transformers, potentially adding more cooling fins, working with manufacturers on what would be the standards. Maybe there's some different materials or alloys that would be used in those pieces of equipment for a long-term uplift as we go forward from that perspective. So those are some examples of things that we do, but cost is certainly top of mind.
On a different scale, but you could have worked for the utility I used to work for. Along the lines of hardening, thinking about that, looking at, the path of the storm, what occurred, were there any areas were there areas where hardening of the grid or other projects had occurred, and if so, after the fact, when you're doing your forensic analysis or whatever, did the company observe any difference?
So I've spoken with some of my transmission counterparts, and I could not tell you the exact project or line, but they did identify that there was a line hardening project that had occurred and did not sustain, I'll say damage that took that line out from that perspective in Helene. Now, I don't know, how the storm actually was around that line or what specifics, but that was one. On the distribution side, and I think this was talked about during the ex parte where Joel Lunsford, Jason Hollifield, and Jay Oliver were here maybe back in December. I think they spoke specifically about some targeted underground projects that had been done that essentially there was no damage to the facilities that we had undergrounded. The transmission system having some damage, they had to restore the transmission system to re-energize the substations. But as soon as that was done, those facilities came back. There was no distribution, repair work, or storm restoration that had to be done inside those neighborhoods that had been done. That does, there's cost associated with undergrounding, but that's another example I think shared previously.
So am I hearing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but am I hearing that there were tangible, measurable areas where specific hardening was done, such as underground encasing, whatever, that Helene did not have the same negative effect as those without?
I would agree with that assessment. That is a tool of the tool belt for us.
So is it, and I think you said that on a weekly basis, whether it's self-optimizing grid or whatever, the company is bringing more and more of that online. And I know my former utility in Spartanburg County, we had not necessarily a hurricane, but, having 12 inches of rain in less than 24 hours, lines wash away, terrible things, but going back and replacing them, encasing them, preparing for that happening again, only worse. Is that what I'm hearing Duke is doing also?
So at the highest level, I would say yes. The actual construction techniques may be different than a water utility or a gas utility, yes. but the same thing. I will say this, and you brought it up there. Undergrounding is not the magic bullet for everything. It has its place. Technically it's feasible, typically. But the example, I live in Western North Carolina. Attended a briefing with the North Carolina Commission, and there was a gas utility, Enbridge, formerly Dominion. The amount of debt, their system's completely underground. With the amount of landslides and washouts, significant damage to the underground utility. If we had underground lines in the same areas they did, we would have seen that same damage from that perspective. That certainly is atypical, or I sure hope it is in the future from that perspective. But a more tropical event that we normally experience, we would not see that kind of damage. And to my knowledge here in the upstate, didn't see that type of significant flooding, not the landslides, just significant vegetation damage from that perspective.
And really just a point of curiosity, where I live in Clemson, during Helene, and of course it was bad in our area too, everybody's power was out. But my little neighborhood wasn't. And it blipped a couple times. And actually, this past weekend, power was out downtown, or weekend before last, I can't remember, because I had to wait on the traffic lights that weren't working. But at our house, same thing, I saw a blip, and that didn't lose power. Is that, just for my benefit, optimizing grid optimization and such as that, is that such that you have back loops, it recognizes things at speed of light and clicks on this, cuts off that? Would that be why something like that occurred?
That certainly could be the case, and I'll give you two examples of what you may have personally experienced. A small momentary outage or blip, I think is the term used. Our protective equipment does that automatically because a lot of faults that we have on our overhead system are temporary. And so that's by design, that it will open up momentarily. The fault is temporary, it disappears, and the breaker recloses and re-energizes. But the self-optimizing grid is just a 21st century version of that from that perspective. And what it does is it's not just the protective device in the substation that's blinking 1,000 or 2,000 customers when that happens. If there's a fault anywhere in that self-optimizing grid network, it will identify where that fault is, isolate it, and restore everyone else that it can by closing in new switches within 60 seconds with no human intervention. So it takes what we used to do manually and automates it and does it in less than a minute, where a crew may have taken several hours to do that.
Okay. And I know that last part had nothing to do with securitization, but I've wanted to ask somebody that for a while, and thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And as a disclaimer, Commissioner Caston's power did not stay on because he's on the Public Service Commission. Any further commissioner questions? Hearing none, you may step down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman Powers, if I may redirect some of his
Oh, I'm
questions.
sorry. Go ahead.
Is that allowed? I just have a few. I'll be brief.
Sure. I apologize. I overlooked you.
All right. Mr. Guyton, in response to Commissioner Caston's questions, you mentioned examples of some of the investments the company has made to keep or increase reliability and resiliency of the grid. Do you recall?
I do.
And were a lot of those investments made through the grid improvement plan?
The targeted underground examples that I referenced were, and to my knowledge, the transmission were definitely part of the grid improvement work. And the transmission line hardening, I believe that was as well.
If there are any additional, can you speak more to those investments as part of that program?
I don't know if I can name specific projects, but certainly self-optimizing grid and how we've broadened that automation umbrella, that was part of our grid improvement work that we're doing. We're continuing that work. Targeted underground specifically was also part of that. And I gave one example of transmission line hardening. There's also substation hardening as well and modernization that goes along with that. All those things I just mentioned were part of the overall grid improvement plan. There were others as well, but those in my mind more specifically address resiliency types of efforts.
Thank you for that, Mr. Guyton. I have no additional questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. I didn't ask any questions from any parties. All right. Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, that concludes our direct case.
All right. Thank you very much. Department of Consumer Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would like to call Mr. Rothschild to the stand. He is appearing virtually.
Mr. Rothschild, there you are.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Your witness.
Thank you. Mr. Rothschild, may you please state your full name and business address for the record?
My name is Aaron Rothschild. My business address is 15 Lake Road in Ridgefield, Connecticut.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
Rothschild Financial Consulting, and I'm president of Rothschild Financial.
Did you prepare 37 pages of direct testimony for this docket, which was filed on May 19th, 2025?
I did.
And did your direct testimony include 17 pages of exhibits labeled ALR1 through ALR4?
That's correct.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your testimony or exhibits?
I do not.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to have the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Rothschild entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Rothschild will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
And Mr. Chairman, I would move to have the exhibits ALR1 through ALR4 collectively entered as the next applicable hearing exhibits.
The pre-filed exhibits of witness Rothschild, identified as Rothschild Direct Exhibits ALR 1 through 4, will be marked for identification and placed in the record as exhibit number 21.
Thank you. Mr. Rothschild, did you also prepare 16 pages of surrebuttal testimony, which was filed in this docket on June 12th, 2025?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your surrebuttal testimony?
I do not.
Mr. Chairman, I move to have the pre-filed surrebuttal testimony of Mr. Rothschild entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed surrebuttal testimony of Mr. Rothschild will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
And Mr. Rothschild, did you prepare 7 pages of settlement testimony, which was filed in this docket on June 23rd, 2025?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your settlement testimony?
I do not.
If I ask you those same questions today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move to have the pre-filed settlement testimony of Mr. Rothschild entered into the record as though given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed settlement testimony of Mr. Rothschild will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you. And Mr. Rothschild, do you have a summary of your testimonies that you would like to provide?
Yes, I do. I'm happy to be testifying again on behalf of the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. And the purpose today is to summarize and support the 3-party settlement agreement between DEC, DCA, and ORS. And why this settlement matters: it resolves complex securitization issues that I believe are in the best interest of DEC's consumers. It aims to deliver the lowest feasible storm recovery charge and quantifiable net benefits for consumers. It enhances transparency, oversight, and accountability in the bond issuance process. I had 5 original recommendations in my direct testimony. Number 1 was to extend the 4-business day commission review or tolling period. The second was to engage major index providers on bond classification. Number 3 was to provide a real-time transparency and data access for the QITP. Number 4, to require unqualified underwriter certifications. And number 5, to add DCA consultant to the bond advisory team. After negotiations, I withdrew 2 of those recommendations, which was the extension of the tolling period and 2, the engagement with index providers. There are still recommended and now secured in the settlement is number 1, the QITP has real-time access to the order book, investor feedback, and pricing memos. Number 2, underwriter certifications are without material qualifications. And DCA's consultant is seated on the bond advisory team. Additional settlement protections: the marketing strategy must target both corporate bond and asset-backed security investors. And 2, the BAT will weigh broad versus focused marketing to achieve the lowest yields. And the company commits to help the QITP obtain any redacted information needed for its statutory certification. So the bottom line is the settlement meets the legislative objectives, strengthens consumer safeguards, and retains commission oversight. I recommend that the commission approve the settlement agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Rothschild. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Rothschild is now available for questions from the commission.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the company?
No questions.
Any questions from ORS?
No questions.
Commissioner questions? Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Rothschild.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Thomas.
I hope it's a little cooler where you are than where we are.
I checked it out. It's about 6 degrees cooler. So it's not much better.
That's better, though. Just a few questions. So, from Department of Consumer Affairs perspective, which provisions of the settlement agreement support a finding that the structuring, marketing, and pricing of the bonds will result in the lowest storm recovery charges?
Well, I think my first thought is my recommendations that were kept, which is to provide a real-time transparency and data access for the QITP. I think that's going to be very critical. And also the work that was done to move towards helping to make sure these certifications are well without material qualification. I think that's very helpful to improve with transparency and making sure there's oversight. And I think it's also helpful for DCA's engagement to be able to be actively involved as they were in the last case, but also to be able to have their advisor or consultant to be there as needed.
All right. And would you agree that based on the terms of the settlement agreement as a whole, the customer's interests are represented in the next phases of the securitization proceeding?
I do. I think it really forms that framework. And my understanding, I wasn't in the BAT meetings in the DEP securitization, but I understand it was very productive, and there, any information that was needed was provided. So I would expect it would be similar. So I just, as I mentioned in my direct testimony, I think just because there were a lot of successful aspects to that, I think doesn't mean we shouldn't try and improve and all work together to make sure consumers are represented. So I do believe the settlement allows that framework for consumers to be represented, but it really will depend on the continued collaboration in the BAT meetings.
Okay. And as modified by the terms of the settlement agreement, the terms proposed transaction provide adequate protection to all customer classes?
I do believe it sets the foundation for that, yes.
Okay. And would you agree that the proposed transaction, as modified by the settlement agreement, is expected to provide quantifiable net benefits to customers?
I do.
Okay. And through its participation in the bond advisory team, can you describe how DCA staff and consultants will continue to ensure that the statutory cost objectives are met for residential customers beyond this phase of the securitization proceeding?
I think it'll just be mostly asking questions and making sure, in particular, that these bonds are really marketed in the best possible way. So that's what we'll really be focusing, to make sure this issue with asset-backed securities versus corporate bonds are addressed. And I know the underwriters that will be involved will have that expertise, so we want to make sure that is actually implemented in the best interest of consumers. So that's really what we'll be doing, is to be asking constructive questions and making sure that we're all collaborating, as I do believe all the parties in the BAT meeting will want to do.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had at this time. So continue to enjoy your cool weather.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Caston.
Thank you. And good afternoon also.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Good. Did you hear my, I guess, questions and responses from Mr. Heath and Semino relative to the material qualification discussion?
I did.
Do you agree with, I guess, the comments, what was said, or anything you want to add?
Well, I was listening, but I was also in the process of preparing a summary. So I wouldn't say I have as comprehensive. But from what I had heard, I didn't hear any issues. But I don't know if there. I would appreciate if you could ask me if you're concerned about a specific issue that was addressed. It'd be helpful.
I have no specific issues that I'm concerned about. I just want to make sure you have no specific issues.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's helpful that I think it's important that that the certifications are unqualified, and I know there is the term no material qualifications. But I think through the BAT process, we'll want to make sure if there are any qualifications that those are addressed. There should be a good reason. We really want to make sure that there isn't just something like, well, this is reasonable, or it appears to be reasonable, or to the best of our knowledge, or assuming the information provided is correct. We want to make sure that whoever's doing the certifications is going to really up the game to make sure that they're checking. And I think the framework is there. I think DEC understands the importance of that. So I'm encouraged.
All righty, good, thank you. And finally, I asked a similar question, I think, of Mr. Heath and Mr. Semino. And is it your understanding that the QITP's certification should also be provided without material qualifications?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. And I agree with Mr. Commissioner Thomas. I hope you enjoy your upper 80s, low 90s weather.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. Any further commissioner questions? Mr. Hall, any redirect? All right, thank you, Mr. Rothschild. Good to hear from you, and you may step down.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is a good time for us to take our lunch break, and if we could be back at 1:30, and we will then hear from the Office of Regulatory Staff. We are in recess.